That's right. That was, I think, 2016.
Yeah, because Matt was asking last night, how many of these have we done?
This is our fourth.
It is our fourth?
Yep.
We figured that out?
Mm-hmm. The second year was a little hazy because I was ill. And then last year was the third, which was done in the evening.
Yes.
It was done on a Thursday evening last year, which was a little bit different.
The first one we ever did, I pulled up and you were sitting in your car watching, and I was like, oh my God, he's like hardcore.
Intense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I said to Matt, I'm behind this year. And he was like, with all that Tim's gone through, you better have, be more,
on top
prepared than he is. I'm like, I'm not.
All right, we ready?
But I'm glad you like Wind River.
Welcome to the Mix Minus podcast, Oscar Extravaganza.
Extravaganza.
This is the fourth year the three people here have gotten together. 4 years. One presidential cycle. This can't come soon enough. We have Jayme Mulhern and Tim Castano. Not only is it the fourth year, but this is the 90th Academy Awards.
That's right.
Started in 1927, I believe.
Yes.
Unbelievable. And
when they still were honoring silent films.
And the 27 Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Was it all silent? Is that right?
No, they had some talking pictures.
Talking pictures.
And I don't believe we have agreed on the best. I think we've always been, coming from different.
It's bringing in your phone is bringing in the maybe it's not, maybe it's your take. Just kidding.
It's crackling.
Yeah, we were getting the crackling.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. Technology.
Sizzling take.
We haven't. Yeah, but the difficulty is Gold Derby just kind of tells you what it's going to be, right?
Well,
but they're not always right.
No,
they're not. And last year, for about 2 minutes, we had a different Best Picture winner than.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
That's very true.
Someone asked last night, "It's like, well, didn't La La win Best Picture?" I was like, "Well, yeah, for about 45 seconds."
That was a shame, honestly. Poor people.
That's right. So, like any year, there's a lot of good movies. I would probably say I wasn't blown away where I'm sitting here going, boy, there's 4 or 5 I think could win. And Tim, you said when we were driving to get coffee, you wouldn't be surprised if any of them won.
My response would be, if you told me almost any of the Best Pictures won, I would just be, sure. Yeah, so I don't feel strongly about any one way or the other, either for good reason or bad reasons.
Right. My interpretation was underwhelmed. I didn't think anything was like, oh my God. I didn't.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's just...
Oddly, though, at the same time, I didn't look at many of the movies and exit thinking they could have been better if they had done X, Y, or Z. So I felt like they did as well as they could have, and I wouldn't necessarily change much about them, but they just didn't necessarily leave an impact on me.
I think I felt like they were all Martin Scorsese-ish, where you could have cut an hour out of several of them. Like, why were they all so long?
Well, then Dunkirk would have been 30 minutes long and it would be short. I know. We shouldn't get into Dunkirk just yet.
Well, isn't it funny when you get into the Oscar season and we have to watch all these? We have to. Like, it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
But when you get into watching all these movies, when you start it, and I tend to watch it on my iPad on these sites that I shouldn't say because when I say them, they'll go away. But when I watch them and you look at the little scrubber at the bottom that tells you how long they are, you're like, 220? Really? 220. You got to be under 2 hours, I think. And you got to be efficient with that. Right? 2 hours sort of is the spot if you can't get that movie in place.
Yeah, I agree. It's, I just watched this year The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh my God, it's so long.
It's so long. And that's why I never, and it was good, but I just, the timing, I just can't.
Well, because you can't sit and you want to be able to watch a movie in one sitting. And when you start getting over 2 hours, 5 minutes, because a lot of us were adults, we're not all retired, Jayme, but a lot of us who are adults can watch this sort of on the margins of the day, on the margins of the week, which are the weekend. And it's hard to get that solid 2 hours. And if you're watching an Oscar movie, you really need to watch the whole thing in the one sitting. Because I watched, which we'll talk about in a moment, I watched The Shape of Water over 2 nights. And I was sitting there going, wow, I got so many nominations. And did I not love it because it was over 2 nights? Did I not love it because I was just watching it on my iPad? Did I not love it because the site that I got it from had some weird subtitles, which were almost like joke rap subtitles? It was like so weird. I don't even know what I was watching. And I was paying more attention to the subtitles because they were so strange. But yeah, I was having some trouble with that. But I actually learned one thing because we're talking. First of all, Tim, what's a good movie length?
For
2 hours?
I think 2 hours, even 150.
Yeah.
145.
Wasn't Lady Bird like it was like 145?
And I think
maybe?
Moonlight was as well last year. It clocked in. And you get some, actually sometimes it's usually the acting films that come in shorter than Best Picture nominees. So for instance, Tender Mercies, I think it's barely 90 minutes long when Robert Duvall won Best Actor.
I didn't know what it was. Did you?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Tim knows everything.
I, Tonya, right?
I, Tonya, yeah. So that they're sometimes is more of a showcase for the actor, the shorter the film, as opposed to the film itself needing to be completely on display. So I agree with you, especially this time of year when we're trying to consume so much that it's
and I do love, I love the movie theater experience. I love going, the big screen, and some of them I think warrant that you would enjoy them more on the big screen.
Right.
But obviously preparing for this, you can't see all of them that way. But I think we should start with what we talked about last year, where we were so annoyed that all the previews were for Dunkirk for all the movies we had to see last year. And then we ended up having to see it.
Well, and I loved it. I really loved Dunkirk. I'll tell you what, I was laughing at it and I was like, what the hell is this? And I'm ignorant because I never quite, you always hear Dunkirk, but I just thought it was another war movie. I actually went to see it with Jamie's mom when we were in the summer at our summer vacation in Wildwood, and it rained that day. And us two, along with everyone else in Wildwood, were going to see that movie on that day, which was a strange experience. And we had to sit in the front row looking straight up at it. So that was another look.
God.
But I thought the movie was great. And I don't love war movies. I know American Sniper is your favorite. I don't love war movies, but because this one was a kind of a saving movie, it was saving massive amounts of people who were not going to make it otherwise, and sort of the societal good of everyone bringing their boats together. It was an amazing movie. There was something weird to me about how they were trying to play with time, and it was like 1 hour is 1 day is, I forget what it was, but it took a while to understand what the heck was going on there, and I didn't know if that was totally necessary. But I ended up liking it.
You felt good about it. Yeah. Like you wished you were British. Like you were talking like that about it. Like you felt really good about it. What did you think of it?
Well, actually, this ties in well to the point about length of movies. I think when we all saw the trailers, I know other friends of mine were expecting, all right, we're in for an epic here. And then when we first got word that this is about 90 minutes long, that changed my perspective heading into it entirely. And I did enjoy it. I liked it a lot. I liked what they did. I thought Christopher Nolan is a genius. I think Christopher Nolan, I think, grew in the right way. He deviated, I think, from some of his previous techniques with this film and did so to the benefit of the film. He didn't really necessarily fall too much in love with his own method or styles, but wanted to tell the story in a different way, but not so much so that it was distracting. I know that might not be the case for everybody, where the timing and the alignment of the narratives was off. I really did like it. I think it was a different perspective on a war film. I thought that they gave you, sometimes in films like that, you lose the personal connection. I thought the story with, especially with Mark Rylance and his role, I thought that was a really touching and arresting performance that he gave amidst this sort of larger, grander scale evacuation. And I thought it was very well done. I thought the soundtrack was terrific. I thought the soundtrack was almost like another performer in the film. And again, I understand why people had an issue with sort of the narrative, and I did feel like I need to go back and watch this again, knowing that that's the case. But I did like it quite a bit.
Shockingly, I hated it.
America first.
No, it had nothing to do with that. But I will confess, I'm not all that bright. And, you know, I know you guys are
I will make the same confession.
But, like, for me, I didn't know if Dunkirk was a person, if it was a place, if it was the name of a ship. I knew nothing. Did I sleep in high school, or did they? I don't remember ever even hearing the word.
It's a British story, and it's a
Dunkirk
story of pulling back, really. So it's a national.
And you usually, I mean, I don't know about you, but when we got to May in grade school, like we were maybe past the First World War. We were lucky if we got to the Second World War. So.
Yeah, so I just didn't, like, I was completely not knowing what was going on. And there wasn't a lot of dialogue, I didn't think. So I just had so much trouble. And I went with my husband. He loved it, of course. And he's like, how could you not know what Dunkirk is? I said, the first time I heard of it was in every preview last year. Like, that's the only thing. But I said, so wait, so the people in the helicopters or the planes, like, they're the bad people and the boat people. And he's like, didn't you see the black and yellow circle on the, I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and that doesn't click for you? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I just could not follow any of it. And I thought the actual production of it was like Blair Witch. Like, I had the same motion sickness feeling watching that. Like, I felt like I was in the boat. So the whole thing, I was just, and I know a lot of people liked it. Most people liked it.
Interestingly, it's the third picture released this year tied to Dunkirk in some way, because we have Dunkirk, then we also have Darkest Hour, but then there's another film that came out earlier this year, which is called, I think if I get the title correct, Their Finest, with Bill Nighy and Sam Chalfin, and it tells a story after Dunkirk of the British, their version of, I guess, their propaganda unit trying to make a film about Dunkirk during World War II to entice the U.S. into the war and to sort of infuse the nation with some pride. And it's a different take on it entirely. It's a romantic, sort of a romantic comedy, but interesting that Dunkirk was thrice treated this year in 2017.
And in the beginning, they were like, it's going to win everything. Like, they were really kind of,
they thought that this was Nolan's.
This was it, like his directing and all of it.
Well, and it was early, which is interesting. It's actually very interesting this year. All the movies I saw before Oscar season, which is when I see most of my movies, pretty much all ended up in Oscar nominations somehow. I happened to see Logan, which is shocking that got in there. I don't watch those movies very much, but Logan, for whatever reason, looked like it would be really good. And it was kind of going to be Hugh Jackman's last stand, right? And then I saw Get Out in March, because there was a lot of buzz about it. You didn't think it was going to be Oscar buzz eventually, but there was a lot of just sort of ground-swelling buzz about it, because it really came from very modest levels, where it was made for maybe $3 or $4 million with the Microsoft product placements in tow to like such a degree. And then it made like, what, 300 million or something? And then it got the critical acclaim on top of it. So it was a good year in that respect. One thing I wanted to bring up on the Dunkirk aspect, I've often been wondering, last week I read a really good article about this guy who wanted to get to the South Pole. It was in the New Yorker. It was like an hour and a half article to read. It was like a good sized movie. And it was talking about the guy 100 years earlier who went to the South Pole. Can't think of his Shackleton, which that'll be a good movie whenever that comes out. There hasn't been a movie about that, right?
I believe that there actually has. I think Bravo had done a
but
series.
not like an Oscar one, right?
I don't believe so.
It got me thinking, do you wonder if some of the dislocation we feel in our countries, is it because we don't have these singular narratives to get behind, like a Dunkirk, like a going to the South Pole, like a going to the moon?
Well, we did do that.
No, I know we did it, but I'm saying where we are now.
Oh.
No, but like where we are now.
Well, that's kind of what the Olympics are supposed to do.
Right, but they don't do it.
On a smaller level, unite us. in that regard. Part of that is, I mean, we could go off in a different direction here, but de Tocqueville, when he wrote his work, I think one of his quotes is something about just how pluralistic America is, just by virtue of how we are constructed, that it is virtually impossible to arrive at some sort of equilibrium, that there's always going to be some sort of discord in that regard. So on one sense, the narrative that appeals to a certain part of the country may not to another part of the country, but you're correct. I mean, then we could get into the fact that why do certain nations start wars? Sometimes it is to be a unifying factor. So the Iran-Iraq war, for example, occurred not long after Iran had undergone a regime change, and then some people think that the war is in fact instigated to solidify the nation under one umbrella. So now we're really off in a lot of directions.
No, but I was thinking about that with that. Like, I felt good to be British in that moment.
Lindbergh. Charles Lindbergh did that. Charles Lindbergh did that when he, of course, then he turned out to be a Nazi sympathizer. But that's.
But isn't it funny that they have these things? We don't have these. We've had every adventure that you can sort of have in our world, and then even on the periphery of our world for the moment with what technology can bring us, that our great advancements don't end up being the types of things that large swaths of a national identity can get behind. It's kind of sad if we take it from there. That's why we like movies.
Well, now I'm depressed.
And that's why we are often not in agreement. I mean, you and I in general. But, with the movies, it's just, different things speak to different people. So.
Well, you like that Shaq movie too, right?
No, I loved the book.
Okay.
I love the book.
That was another one we talked about where it was like, what is going on in that one? I didn't see any of the weird. Did anyone see any weird previews from our Oscars coming ahead? I feel like we got those out of our system last year. I don't see a lot of weird ones coming up.
No, there's one that looks interesting. I don't remember the name of it. But you, of course, Tim will know. With Saoirse. It's a drama, and I can't think of the name of it, but that was one that I saw a couple of times.
And Jennifer Lawrence is going to play a Russian spy,
yes,
I believe.
Yeah, in Red Sparrow.
And apparently she gets nude, and she's nude around the set and is totally cool with it. She's a character actor.
Yeah, not a big fan of hers.
Well, why don't we jump into our pictures, and we'll go from the highest predicted to win to the lowest. We'll start with our best pictures. Shape of Water with 13 nominations. As I said, I had a hard time getting through this movie. And once the nominations came out, I was like, wait, is it because the way I watched it? Do I need to go to the theater? There was a time where I was thinking of going to the theater. I didn't fully love the movie, and yet it's critically lauded. And I wonder, is this the type of thing where it's like the film students movie, where everybody who loves film and loves the art of it can watch this movie and they see all those secret things that us normal folks don't see, even though Tim is sort of a closet film student. But
he totally is.
A little bit.
But I think this is the one movie where we all agree, I think, for the most part. And I had friends that it's their pick as best.
It was very political
picture.
That way, right? I mean, you don't, it's almost like going up and talking to someone about current events, and then you don't know where they stand until they start talking.
Yes.
And then you're like, maybe I need to. We don't do that with current events. We just automatically go like, no, he's crazy.
Right.
But this one, I'll come up to people and it was actually a joke at
the English Patient in Seinfeld, remember?
Oh, yes.
The English Patient.
There was a gentleman, I won't say who it is because in case anyone listens to it, there was a gentleman at your husband's retirement party, which was a retirement wedding, basically. It was at a country club and there was like 100 people. Imagine if you had a surprise wedding. That would be kind of funny. If someone just showed up and it was he was surprised. It was his retirement journey.
It was a surprise.
But there was someone who was there and I was remarking to the woman next to me, boy, he looks like the guy in Shape of Water. And I thought it was kind of funny in that moment, but she started talking to me about The Shape of Water and it was like the most moving thing in her life. And I was just sitting there going, oh, okay. All right.
I didn't know anything really about it. And when it started, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like the way the apartment was and the architecture of it. I was interested. I was like, okay, what's happening? Like, this is kind of cool. Like, I was getting into it. As it went on, I wanted to leave. Like, I was like, this is getting worse and worse for me in just ridiculous factor. Octavia Spencer is fantastic, right? We all love her.
Can they get her out of this decade though?
Right.
Because she was just
But
in
I
that
felt
one last
like
year, right?
in the scene towards the beginning where they're like cleaning and there's like the guys are smoking and stuff, I was like, this seems like a bad high school play. Like, that's what that felt like to me. And it just got, I don't know. And people, when I say I didn't like it, they're like, oh my God, how could you not like it? You know, you don't have imagination. You don't believe in love. You don't, you know, I just, and I think I have imagination and I do believe in love, but this just was off the rails for me.
It's almost like a Punk'd episode, right?
Right.
Where you come out and everyone's going, oh my God, that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And you're like waiting for Ashton Kutcher to jump out. And I don't mean to crap on this because it probably is a great movie to people and I can appreciate the certain aspects once I was told and the nominations are great. But Tim, be the voice of reason here.
Before I do that, just Kermit the Frog in The Muppets Take Manhattan was hit with a surprise wedding. So there's an example.
Oh my God.
Yes. So
okay.
Tim knows everything.
So he was hit with a surprise wedding. So liked it, didn't love it, didn't like it as much as it liked itself. And that was kind of how I felt maybe halfway through, which is like, this is falling in love with itself a little bit too much.
That's a good thought on that.
I actually was surprised at how conventional it was, how conventional the story was. Not knowing a whole lot before I went into it, I expected maybe something a little, I mean, visually, I thought it was great. I thought the pastels of the era and that style and the sort of Art Deco pastels, and they captured that very well. But the story itself, I thought, was pretty conventional and was let down by that. And then Del Toro, I think, is going to win Best Director, but he does some things very well, other things he does not do very well. So I don't think he does like human intimacy very well, and that's actually not a pun. I know that it was not a human,
right?
Right. But there are certain parts of that where it fell a little flat for me, and I didn't walk out thinking I just saw the best picture of the year. I think I walked out feeling like I think I just saw the best director.
I agree. I think he'll be best director.
But there wasn't enough human connection. There wasn't, even though there's not supposed to be. But there wasn't enough like this ties to our world somehow, and we understand like. And even the performances, like I love Richard Jenkins. I can't wait for the day he actually wins an Academy Award. Love Octavia Spencer. And Michael Shannon was really good. It's great. And the all-star of the entire Oscar season is Michael Stuhlbarg. Did I say it right?
Stuhlbarg, yeah. And terrific. But I didn't really love Richard Jenkins' performance, even though he's now nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And I think he could and should have won in the past for other roles. I didn't. It's like a Lifetime Achievement Award, right? I didn't really find it. Just there were a lot of things about how he was presented, his story. It just didn't tie together as well as I thought it might. And I just, again, I'll go back to what I said. I just thought it was visually great, fell in love with itself a little bit too much, and just a little too conventional for my taste. Yeah, like there was no character development, like. With Richard Jenkins, like there was I guess more could have happened. Well, but did everyone else get that he was gay? Well, that's the thing. That scene. I assumed. I know, but it was like when I read about it after, it was like supposed to be very known. I think the scene in the diner where he and the waiter have that interaction, like, is so like poorly done in a way that to that point, like it's kind of messy and sloppy and unsophisticated, and it almost seemed like that's a scene that you could have done maybe 40 years ago or 30 years ago to try to convey, but it's 2018. It's in any event, I found that scene particularly jarring as a weakness, and kind of emblematic of sort of the weaknesses throughout the entire film. And I also felt as though I had no idea who Doug Jones was before this, and I felt as though people wanted to rub that in your face, like, oh my God, Doug Jones does a great job here. And you're like,
I didn't know who he was. He's playing a creature in this movie, so I would never even be able to see him on the street. But he seems to be a very well-known actor.
I never heard of him.
I've heard of him.
Not that means anything.
Did anyone else get that feel? Where it was like, oh my gosh, Doug Jones. And it's funny how that happens because I looked at his IMDb. He's got like ridiculous amounts of things. But if it's not the things you're watching, it's sort of like when an actor goes on a television show for like 12 years.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, who's that actor? And then you look up and it's like he's making $20 million a year on NCIS something, you know? But I felt that way with the Doug Jones. And it was almost like it was beautiful. It's like he wore a suit. It's like,
right.
I don't know. And the love making, like what? I don't know. So it'll probably win. But the funny thing with this movie, a lot of times a movie will win and then everyone goes to see it. I feel like this one, it'll win, and it's not like people are going to be falling over themselves to go and see it. I feel like the crux of the movie will come across very easily, and all the aspects everyone wants you to like about it will come across very easily just in that night of the Oscars.
Can I just say this? This is a point I meant to make, sort of an overarching point overall, which is I don't know. I feel like we're not going to know what the best film of this year is for another 3 or 4 years. I think we're going to need them to age a little bit until we look back at 2017 and say, actually, time has shown that this movie was the most memorable and the best and stood the test of time.
Well, you know, they also say, too, that the movies show the age you're in. Do we feel like the Trump presidency has made a mark on the movies yet? I don't think so, right?
I do not get that sense, no.
Right? And I don't know if that... I don't know
Although
if he's evasive to that.
A good friend of mine who is a big movie lover said that when, art comes from, a lot of, problems, issues, that societal things, like that's where art, comes. So that, like, she thinks more really good movies that hit you are going to be coming up because of all of the things that are going on in the country. And
it's like sleep talking, like the art is like the sleep talking. Like you hide all this stuff in the day and you bury it inside, and then all of a sudden you're yelling about bizarre stuff in the middle of the night.
Right.
I mean, think about like punk sort of came from Reagan, right? I mean, you were sort of in that period. No, you weren't. You were older than that. A little older.
Yeah.
You were sort of 80s punk, right? During the Reagan. Were you in high school during Reagan?
And Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Both of them,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like...
I was a Smith's Cure type of...
Little feelings, yeah. Speaking of feelings, next up, which everyone's been talking about it, but 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Really good movie. Really good acting performances. 7 nominations, though. And it's right up there with Shape of Water to win. Do we feel like it's that level of movie? Tim?
To my last comment about waiting a few years to see how these films age, I feel that applies most to 3 Billboards, because I'm interested when I look back, say 3 or 4 years from now, like did it sustain the same sort of impact? Did it hold together as well as I thought originally? So I went into it. I saw this relatively recently, so after a lot of the buzz, and liked it more than I thought I would. I think it can be kind of gives you a complicated message, not an easy message. And I thought the characters, some of them are a little bit overdrawn, but I thought that it's interesting to see the story about people struggling with forgiveness, and imperfect individuals and highly imperfect characters struggling with a perfect concept of forgiveness and coming to grips with that, and some not wanting to get there and willfully not wanting to get there. And I think that's what's great about Frances McDormand's performance, is like she doesn't want to forgive and does not want to get to that point. She wants a different form of absolution. And I think it's great that a woman is in the vigilante role. Usually it's a man in the vigilante role. And I think it's terrific. I think the gamesmanship Woody Harrelson really is the heart and soul of the movie.
Yeah.
I love everything about him.
Yes, he is the heart and soul of the movie. He is the moral conscience. And even though he does commit suicide, not spoiler alert, he does commit suicide, and you can have your own take on that. But that's what I'm saying. It's complicated in that regard, which is what do we think of the person who is, in fact, sermonizing to others beyond the grave, who himself committed an action that others would judge somewhat harshly. So that's interesting. So I found it it hit me in a right way. I think the performances are terrific. I think Sam Rockwell, I know he is probably a front runner for Best Supporting Actor. I can understand why. I think it's a little overdone. I think his role is almost like too easy to play.
Yeah.
But I think it comes together well. It's imperfect people struggling with a perfect concept up against really, a horrific evil, and how they try and sort of survive in the.
Well, and I would say, before we get to Jamie's point, as an NBA person, I feel like this kind of movie is like the D'Antoni Offense, this kind of black comedy, right? And I wonder, is Frances McDormand like the Steve Nash of the D'Antoni Offense, of the black comedy? And Woody is almost best in this offense too. It's like James Harden. Don't you feel that the movie has its own style?
Yeah, oh, definitely.
For this kind of movie, it's a Coen Brothers ish. It's that black comedy thing, but
it's got a huge heart, where sometimes Coen Brothers movies don't necessarily.
It's true.
And but I agree with you. Yeah, it's you can't imagine anyone else but Frances McDormand playing the role that she does. And this could be a role that we remember Woody Harrelson when we're going over his career, being one of his top 3 to 5 performances that we remember his career. So I would agree with you.
Yeah. What about you, Jayme?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I went into it. I don't like Frances McDormand. Never been like a huge fan. No reason. I just, and I didn't know anything about the movie. I'm like, 3 billboards. Like, I was like, is this like a Motown thing? Like, I literally knew nothing about what it was, but the time worked when, we were going to see it. So that's really how it, happened. And I was like, this is really good. Like, I loved Frances McDormand. I thought she was great. I think she should get Best Actress. I think Sam Rockwell probably will get, supporting.
They can't hurt each other, right? Sam and Woody. It's not like NBA players.
Cancel each other out. No, that can happen.
Yeah,
that does happen. But we'll see if it does.
But it's a good point that you made. Was it really the best picture, or was it the best out of what we've been handed? Which I said was underwhelming.
Yeah. Right. Did it play to the part? Was it like a startup that's built to be bought by one of the big...
That's
it doesn't have to make a profit, right?
I think like 2021 me would like to go back and ask, I almost felt I liked it too much, more than I necessarily should have. So I'm checking myself a little bit to say... Wait,
we're in agreement on this?
It appears that way.
We all like that, and we all didn't like Shape of Water. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Tim, you lost your mother during this period of time.
I did.
How hard was it to see movies, and how much did it kind of change your glasses as you're watching movies this year?
Well, I did go through a period where I didn't see a number of films just because of the experience, and I've only seen a couple since then, and this being one of them, actually, 3 Billboards. So it probably did influence me in ways I don't necessarily understand.
Like the loss was probably more real for you in this movie than just the person watching.
Probably. I will tell you, highly personally, the moment of all the Best Picture nominees, the moment in the film that got to me the most was actually Lady Bird. And it was when you're hearing the voiceover of Laurie Metcalf's letters that she is writing to Saoirse Ronan and sort of the relationship. And now I saw that long before, not long, but several weeks before my mother passed away, but my mother was ill. So, she had Alzheimer's. So I was dealing with that. And when she starts writing about how she was older when she had her, and my mother was older when she had me, and that's the part that just got to me. So I would say, it's always there, and it definitely was present while watching Lady Bird. It probably is here in the last few films I've seen.
You're almost tapped out, right? It's like hard to go see some of these.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's hard for it to register, or that's why I say I want to go back and think about it again when I have some distance to see if I'm overly influenced. I like, for instance, I saw Phantom Thread after my mother passed away.
Okay.
But obviously, mothers play a role in Phantom Thread.
Right.
Didn't necessarily hit me in that regards, but Yeah, so it probably is there, maybe more so than I can really necessarily comprehend at this point in time.
The documentaries destroyed me this year. The ones I watched. So first of all, the crazy thing is the one that's supposed to win, none of us can see. It's not available streaming, I think, at least till very late in February. And it's sort of international, so there's no, you can go see it at some art house theater in like New York. Faces Places it's called. But I did see a few because they're pretty much on Netflix or Amazon. I saw Abacus, and I saw the two which really hit me were The Last Man in Aleppo and Strong Island. Last Man in Aleppo, like, oh my God.
That's getting a lot of...
It destroys you because you're brought right in to the war zone of these white hats, these people who save folks from bombings, or not save them, they try to rescue them. And oh my God, they're pulling children out of these things. And it's just, I would never watch it. And you need to almost watch those things sometimes to see it and to be aware of it and to feel indignation about it.
You don't like war movies.
No, but they're like saving. But this thing was so real, and then the Strong Island was brutal too. I mean, sometimes you just can't. You're tapped out. You just can't go there, and you do it, and you wonder, boy, these are not going to get the acclaim they should get because nobody wants to see this level of personal carnage and actual carnage. But we'll get there. I thought with Three Billboards, some of the fun kind of side characters. It's great seeing Peter Dinklage in something that's not Game of Thrones. And this guy is such a tremendous actor. He is so good in this movie too. Lucas Hedges, who was in Manchester by the Sea.
Love him.
He's in Three Billboards. He's in Lady Bird. Really good year for young actors like Timothée Chalamet, who was in Lady Bird as well, and Call Me by Your Name, and he's best actor. Right? So I love seeing that during the Oscar season. I like seeing the known Oscar movies and these directors who place these people into these movies. It's like, you know, they're going to be the next stage of actors who are really big. And the last thing I would say on it, Caleb Landry Jones will never be able to play anybody but the creepiest person in the movie, right? I mean, his role in Get Out was terrible, and he has the face. He can't get around his face, right? Three Billboards, and then he was in Get Out, and there was a third one he was in during the Oscars, I think. Was it? Oh shoot! What the heck was it? Was it? Was he in The Shape of Water? Or was it? We'll come across it because I saw it. I remember seeing him, and I looked it up, and I can't think of it now. But why don't we move then? Get Out, as I said, is I thought the movie and the turn in the movie and the thing that got you. You don't see turns in a movie like this. The last thing you're expecting is the ending of this movie. It's the last thing you're expecting. It's a well put together movie. I like everything that's around the movie, from how it got made to who it was made by, and then really exalting into these levels of Hollywood and really worldwide domination from the box office. I saw it early on, but there was the buzz. When did you see it, Tim?
I saw it a little bit later.
A little later, Jayme?
Probably somewhere between you two.
I'll say this. I think I did see it on demand, and they do the director's cut ending. Are you aware of this?
No.
It had a different ending.
Really?
Yes, the original.
I did watch it on demand.
Oh, okay. Does he die?
No.
Oh.
He goes to prison.
Oh.
So the police show up at the end, and he is incarcerated. And then the last scene is his friend visiting him in prison. And he obviously can't explain what happened because there's no evidence, because the house burned down. And the idea, I think if I remember correctly, is that in that last scene, he is at peace because he went back to save the person, unlike he did with his mother. And so he is at least at peace with his decision, despite the fact that he is now facing incarceration. And the director said that he actually, after the election last year, so this is where the election comes in, he felt like that was too down of a message to leave on. So he did reshoot the ending, and it's a more uplifting ending, and it's a happier ending for the main characters. But that's just sort of an interesting wrinkle about the.
Did either of you know the ending before you saw it? Were you aware of it?
I was not.
I was not. I knew nothing about it.
And you can't piece it together when you're watching it really either. Right?
No, Howard Stern is the reason I saw it, because he said it was like the greatest thing ever. And I watched it on demand, and I was thinking, this is not good. Like, maybe I rented the wrong one. Like, maybe there's another name, that this can't be the thing that's being, nominated for these awards, because I don't know. I didn't enjoy it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I did. I like the fact that they took a genre they could have been very lazy with this and could have made sort of more of a popcorn popular film. And they didn't do that. They didn't. They made something that's actually a little bit more trenchant and incisive. I saw the previews, the trailer, and somewhat dismissed it as just sort of a horror film that they released in the first quarter of a year to draw people to the theaters.
From the guy from Key and Peele.
Yeah, going for a certain audience, and then you actually find out that there's a really relevant social commentary that's attached to it. I think that's interesting. I like when people take a genre that is a little bit more disposable and expand upon it. So I appreciate what they did. I did enjoy it. I think this could be, to go back to my earlier point about 3 or 4 years when we look back and see what were the films that we remember most, I think this could be the one of the handful that we associate most closely with 2017.
This one punches you in the gut and it stays there. It really gives you a feeling of, not that there's something that can truly put you in the shoes of folks who go through something like that, but it made you realize in their minds what they're going through. I think, as it was written from that point, it was truly a different voice than maybe we're used to. So it's a real win to even be in this discussion, and it's going to win for one of them, right? I mean, it's probably going to win. Was it best, maybe original?
Original.
And it truly was original, as I saw the headline in The Ringer was saying. It truly is. Lady Bird is another movie that's in the mix here, as we've discussed somewhat in some aspects, but really good movie, I think, for seeing through the eyes of somebody else in this place, Greta Gerwig, kind of taking you into Sacramento of her high school time and really telling that story, giving a different view on things. But I think people who came of age in that time, that was right in kind of the mix of when I was in high school, a little after Tim, a little more after Jayme, not too much. But it kind of made you feel back to that time. It felt very poignant and very true to it. And I thought it told those stories extremely well. What did you think, Jayme?
I liked it a lot. I did. My only, I guess, kind of problem with it is, when I went through this, there was the best teen angst movies available. The John Hughes is what I grew up with.
Right.
So, like, for me, like, I always have that on a pedestal for, and I think, so I don't think it was as good as that, but I still thought it was really well done. You definitely felt for the characters. I didn't realize that was Jonah Hill's sister.
Yeah.
And I thought she was fantastic. And that's what, high school girl friendships are. Like, that was very well done. The mother, Lori, fantastic. Lori
and the
Metcalf.
father, Tracy Letts. Too.
Yeah. They just really, heart-wrenching. You could feel what was, going on. And I really enjoyed it. I just, because of where I've come from, I compare everything to the John Hughes, type of stuff. But I thought it was very good.
Well, right down to the Dave Matthews Band laying in the cars, right? And I thought the whole sort of metamorphosis of her wanting to become a cool kid and then ending back up at her friend's apartment, her parents' apartment, was really nice. And then sort of all you want to do is get away from home, but then all you do is see how important home is and what it really had to how big of a part of your life it played.
Yes, yeah, and that's a great line from that the principal gives the main character, which is, "Don't you think attention and love are the same thing?" Because she's reading her stories about Sacramento and says, like, "You really do love Sacramento," and she's like, well, attention and love are the same thing, which then I think alters her perspective on her mother, and that she then that changes that relationship. I really liked it. There's nothing I didn't like about it. I went into it, thinking, how many times can we tell the same story? We've seen this before. What new can they throw at us? But it was so well done that you can't not like it. And Saoirse Ronan is completely charming,
wonderful,
really. And she portrays the balance between just complete self-confidence, but also always shaken self-regard, because as she's trying to navigate. So, I mean, someone who names herself, but then at the same time is trying to fit in, that's like that's a balance that I think everyone goes through, and she really depicts that so beautifully. And, Tracy Letts, you mentioned, Tracy Letts is one of the most...
He was heartbreaking to me. I just thought it was great.
Yeah, and he's one of the most talented people working today when you look at his playwriting plus his acting. And Laurie Metcalf, to me, should win Best Supporting Actress. I know we'll get into that later, but with what she did with that role and what she was given, and I've already explained to how it hit me on a personal level, just genuine and authentic and beautiful, and I thought it was great. You could, and this is one of those pictures where you could say Lady Bird wins Best Picture, and I would say sure, yeah.
You almost want a world where like 5 of these win, and you could like A/B test them to see what society. This is the one, by the way, where I said Shape of Water wins, and I don't think everyone rushes out to the theater to see it. Lady Bird is the kind of movie that wins, and I think everyone goes to see it, and it's opened up in all the theaters again.
And as a female, the teenage daughter mother relationship is so
on point.
Yeah, it's really, I think you need to, well, you don't need to be, just being a girl that has gone through that kind of thing, and all of the insecurities, whether it's, their house, where she said it was, somebody else's, like everything about it was just really well done.
Well, I thought there was a great scene too, I think, when she was trying on a prom dress. And of course they don't have like money, so they're not trying on the nicest looking dresses, but there's a funny scene where you have this young woman who's turning out to be one of like the better actors at an early age, and I think there was something where it was like, you could never be an actor or something, like the mom says it to her in the scene, and you're like, oh, this is so meta. And there was another movie, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but where it was almost like the person's a singer in real life, and they're like, you can never be a singer. I can't remember what it was, but that was kind of funny in that moment.
Something else I'll say about Lady Bird, which is having gone to Catholic school. I think they show you it's not done in a oppressive way. They actually, you can see that the students, like being there, and I think that the teachers and the clergy are portrayed in a really positive way. They're human, they're positive, and that's something you don't see.
Snacking on the communion wafers, which was a true thing.
Oh, that was really funny. Yeah.
My friends stole the communion wafers, and then in between periods, were walking down, going, the body of Christ.
Oh my God!
That's the kind of stuff that happens.
Well, you see the prank that they play on the principal, and she has a great sense of humor about it. Which is it was very sweet to see that.
Just married to God,
Well, and I think all of the wrong side of the tracks, right side of the track things, like almost from those John Hughes movies too, where you think of her telling the cool girl who doesn't want to leave Sacramento, just wants to be a mom and live in live in a world of continuing to be rich and not having aspirations beyond that, which is a pretty good life, actually.
I was going to say, I'd like that.
But telling her that Lucas Hedges' grandmother, that was her house. And then the girl comes walking into the house, and it's like, oh my gosh, why would you say that? And I thought the Lucas Hedges character, again, under the radar, was really good, because he really played the well-off high school kid who doesn't want to rub it in your face he's well off, but just like joking with the parents about being on the wrong side of the tracks. And then, oh my God, the scene she walks in on him kissing the other guy, and then when he breaks down with her at the place she works, he did a good job.
I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, he's really good. Really good run for him.
Yeah, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a really good, well done movie.
And it was funny with Timothy Chalamet. So in this movie, he's pretending to be a virgin and taking someone's virginity, and then in Call Me by Your Name, it's all about his virginity going away. We talked a bit about Dunkirk, but I think it bears mentioning because it'll probably win some things. It has 8 nominations. I think it was the second most. 3 Billboards had 7. Dunkirk had 8. A lot of them are the technical categories, which are the ones that'll probably win. A very, very good story. I mean, a story of retreat, but getting everybody home. And I thought it was extremely touching. Again, I found the time structure. I wish that this movie, like Jayme said, I've heard the term Dunkirk. I didn't know what it really meant. And I made fun of the previews when I saw them because I thought it was just another war movie and that Dunkirk is just like Normandy. It's just another town name that is a war. I had no idea what an important part of the public imagination Dunkirk is to being British, and how it's really in the time where Britain's empire was shrinking, that in many ways the last thing it has, and you saw this in Darkest Hour too, the last thing it has is its people. And we're not going to allow 300,000, some crazy number like that. We're not going to allow them to die alone on beaches without our people coming to their aid. And so it's sort of playing with all those aspects of empire and diminishing empire, and really fighting for what's right and giving meaning to what nationhood really is. And so I really thought it was touching. I learned from that. I wish it gave a little bit more exposition. Is that the word? Mm-hmm. At the beginning, giving you not just kind of dropping you in. I actually did like the first person kind of filming. I thought that was, you really felt like you were in it.
Oh, you absolutely did.
I wish they told you a little more, and I wish they explained that strange use of time a little more, because if people don't know what Dunkirk is, and then you're going to throw that 1 hour, 10 hour, 24 hour thing, that was disorienting.
I can't be the only person who went into it not knowing what it was. There's got to be more people like me.
But he's British, right? Christopher Nolan? Is he British?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think, see, I was going to ask this too. Jayme, you sound like the type who doesn't read anything about the movie before you go in. But you see if it's on an Oscar list, I'm going to go see it. So that's an interesting viewpoint, to go see a movie without really any preconceived notions. So that hurts you with something like Dunkirk. Tim is probably the opposite. You probably go in with like reading every review on it, every person who's important to you telling you about it.
A little bit. I do also go one step farther where...
Of course you do.
No, where I can actually... Sometimes I will actually read the plot of the film. In certain cases, like Dunkirk, I knew how it was going to end. But sometimes I will just try and remove the suspense for me, which I could argue with myself is either, probably hurts me more than helps me. But, so
it's like seeing a movie after you read the book kind of thing.
Yeah. Is that why you like... But is that why you like something like Lady Bird? Because you're not going to read that plot.
No, you're not. Yeah, because the plot is almost secondary to the story.
Once you find out it's not about Lyndon Johnson's wife.
That's right.
Because everyone thought that.
That's true.
Everyone thought that was what it was about. It's like, we got Darkest Hour, we got Dunkirk, we got Lady Bird Johnson.
And there was an LBJ movie earlier this year.
That's right, with Woody.
With Harrelson, yeah. No, so I will. With Dunkirk, although I did, as I said, when I found out that it was 90 minutes long, that definitely shifted my view. I was like, oh, wait, this is going to be different. This is not what I expected. And then I did know a little bit about the timelines and the sort of off-kilter timelines. Which,
I would have liked a handout on that one. Mm-hmm. Like you go into it. I would have enjoyed it even more. It really took me time, because when you play with time like that, but you're in this 90-minute continuum, you're like, wait, wasn't that person saved?
Right.
Or wait, his gas is going to last.
Maybe that played into why I was not understanding.
There, yeah.
I don't know.
I think playing with time and narratives is something that they don't do enough. And even like real-time movies, there aren't that many quote-unquote real-time movies out there.
He did Inception, right?
He did do Inception.
It's almost like he had to bring some part of Inception to Dunkirk. Something has to be a little off about this war movie for me to understand it.
I think that it was your favorite movie of the year. You say it's not, but when I hear you talk about it, you like have such a like you almost want to have that pride. Like you have the pride for the people, but I feel like it really touched you in a way that was your favorite, and you'll be like jazzed if it wins whatever it's going to win.
It'll be a good one. I think once we're done with this, I'd love to hear what the top 3 movies for the people were, because I bet you they'll be all different and shocking. Next up, Call Me by Your Name. So, it's hard for me to relate to these kind of movies. I still, I joke. Like I joked last year, Moonlight was Brokeback Mountain.
Totally was.
I've never seen Brokeback Mountain.
Loved.
But like, I'm not against it. It's sort of like I was saying with the documentaries. I just don't really want to go into it. I'm not relating to it. I'm not finding the coming of age aspects of these. This one was Brokeback Lombardy. Brokeback Pyrenees. It was well done. It was well shot. There were good acting performances. The kid was really good. I kind of like in these villages that we found out it was 1983, and you could hear the music when they're at the local dance club, but it doesn't matter if it's 1983. That's the beauty of it. If you go to that village today, it's going to be just like that.
Yeah, it could be 1903.
I like that aspect. And having gone to an Italian villa kind of similar to that on our honeymoon for a little bit, that really brought me back. But there's parts of the movie I had a hard time buying Armie Hammer as a 25-year-old graduate student. He's one of those guys who looks older than his actual age. And so he's like 31. And then Timothy Chalamet looks younger than his actual age. I had a hard time. I felt like I missed a part of the movie where this love affair kind of happened. It just sort of appeared and he's grabbing his crotch.
Yeah, I was maybe it's like the gaydar where you just kind of know, so it's okay. But
I had a hard.
I wasn't a fan of this one either. We didn't talk about this yet, Tim. How do you feel about this one?
I was angry at it.
Ooh,
for irrational reasons, and the reason why is you mentioned Moonlight, and some individuals just instinctively compare it to Moonlight. Oh, it's this year's Moonlight. And that's what made me angry. I was like, it is nothing like Moonlight. Moonlight to me was a masterpiece. This is maybe an above average movie. So I went in my anger toward it is irrational. So I need to set that aside. So I'm angry on it. I'm angry at it on Moonlight's behalf. And also angry in the fact that like, just because there is one similarity in the storyline, which therefore then it's painted with the same brush, and I think that's kind of lazy to say too, because it's not. They're very, very different films.
Completely different.
Completely different. I thought the pace was bad. I thought the pace was off. I agree with you. It looks great. It's well stylized. I thought the pace was off. Didn't like all the performances. And I just found the characters a little bit too pretentious and off-putting for me to really just invest in them. Like, I did not want to see them happy. I know that sounds strange. I did not want to see them happy, which I don't know what that says about me. Whereas, usually in your films, if you're invested emotionally, you do want to see some sort of resolution on each person's behalf. I actually thought the father was great.
Amazing.
Well, Spielberg again.
Yeah. Terrific. I mean, he could have and perhaps should have been a Best Supporting Actor nominee. Mm-hmm.
He played that professor perfectly.
Yes. Yeah. Now, as parents, I think they were a little too permissive. I don't care if it's a woman or a man. You don't let your child as a teenager have a relationship with someone who's that much.
You'll never have anything like that again.
You just there's certain lines. He was too old for him. She would have been too old for him if it were great.
But is that the European permissiveness of being there?
I don't know if that's like the academic sort of.
It was very pretentious.
We speak 3 languages.
So looking at the movie, I said I didn't like the pace. Didn't like some of the performances. I thought that, some of the performances I did like. I said the father. The characters themselves didn't really grab me. I was not really invested in their happiness. So to me, and this was going into it. I'd heard about it for months and months, where people thought when it was on the film circuit cycle that this is going to be the one that sweeps, and get ready for it. It's going to redefine how you think of Armie Hammer, and I just was let down by it in that.
I didn't buy that.
Wow, we agree on this one too. This is very odd.
I didn't buy either of their sexuality.
No.
I just didn't, and I think it was not a well done job in making it seem like their sexuality is as fluid as it just was. Because I'm sitting there going, first of all, the kid's French girlfriend was beautiful.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, no, I'm going this way. This kid will sleep with a woman. He'll sleep with a peach, and he'll sleep with, and I just didn't buy that. And maybe there is a section of society who was going through that, but even that part didn't feel like, because there's a part of it that's trying to tell you, well, this was like the 80s too, where people weren't ready to come out, and that they were ultimately just going to go back to getting married in the conventional way. And that last scene, that was the only scene that kind of grabbed you a little bit, was the last one. But then they go into the really long music ending, because they almost want that you to know that music, that song is a finalist. But I didn't buy I just didn't buy that part. There was never a part where I went like, oh my God, they're really catching this. Like, I thought that Armie Hammer's indifference to him in the beginning was true indifference, that I could give a crap about this pipsqueak. There wasn't like a moment where they like caught eyes, or I don't know. That was the hard part. I felt like they were playing with that. Whereas Moonlight, not only did I feel the character that was his true self, but all three actors of the character, that was his sexuality.
Yeah,
that was true.
Yeah, for me, I mean, Moonlight was just, as I said, I think.
I mean, this one, it again, slow. You know, I felt like you could cut an hour out of it. Which it should be,
because it's the Italian kind of summer. It's the countryside, but
yeah, but and you know, I saw him as like a 13 or 14-year-old, kind of like prepubescent. Yeah. Like, that's what I thought. And the other guy was like, is this like a 45-year-old? Like, is this like a pedophile thing? Like, I don't think that was cast well. I think that was, and clearly age is not an issue for me. But I didn't think that was done well.
As I said, angry at it on Moonlight's behalf, because I thought Moonlight was just so far and above away from this that it should not even be compared to it. Yeah. And has anyone read this book? No.
Yeah. Nor will I.
So I don't even know if it could be.
I don't know how to read.
Yeah.
But that scene with the father, I mean, that was it. I feel like if that scene wasn't in there, I would be angry that it wasted my time.
Yeah, but like, even speaking of Tim's thing about the permissiveness, the parents understand, like the dad understanding the levels of the relationship. And then when they get to the next scene and they get on the phone, oh, he's getting married. Oh, congratulations. And he knows that his son is just I just think you need to be a little bit more protective of your teenage children than allow them to, Why don't we let him go down the coast with Armie for a couple of nights?
Yeah, it was just the strangest thing. And again, some people are like, this was beautiful, and this was, all this great stuff. What I do want to say about the movies with homosexual kind of undertones overtones, as in this one.
Undertones is fried green tomatoes. Overtones is
call me by your name. Yeah. They don't touch on the woman's feelings. And, I obviously have a personal issue with that. So I
felt terrible for the French girlfriend.
But it's like, she was like, okay, it's okay. Like,
a similarity with
Lady Bird, yeah.
Same thing. Very understanding.
Everyone's fine. Everyone's like, I've been that girl. You're not fine. It's not okay. You know what I mean?
But it's funny. The Lucas Hedges in Lady Bird, though, she wasn't okay with it until she saw him truly, that it was that's who he was, and it was devastated. And then she was sort of like, okay, this isn't me.
Right.
It's not wrong. Like, they did a better job with the homosexual scenes in Lady Bird than they did in Call Me by Your Name in some ways.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But it was, but even the permissiveness in general, I think when adults tell you how kids feel, that's where it can be kind of difficult. It's sort of like Manchester by the Sea last year. I think we remarked that it's like, oh my God, these kids are so free and easy with sex.
Right.
They're so young and they're like, yeah, I'm sleeping with these 4 women. And it's like,
Yeah.
Casey Affleck's like, okay, well, we found out some things about him. But next up, Phantom Thread. Tim, what is this movie about?
I think this movie is actually a comedy. I really do.
Like a meta comedy, almost like where Paul Thomas Anderson's going like, I take you this and I raise you this. Let's see if people think this is a legitimate movie.
Almost like a romantic comedy. I know that sounds outrageous, but some of the dialogue actually is hysterical. And I went into it a little bit blank, and I think people focus a little too much on the fact that, oh, this is the artist and the artist coming to grips with a relationship. And it's like, no, this is an adult having a relationship, coming to grips with a relationship. And I think you can identify with it more than you realize until you see it. And if you open yourself up to a little bit, you do see that. But I think it is a comedy, and it's a dark comedy, especially at the end when he surrenders to her ploy of sort of tearing him down and then building himself back up again. And that's the relationship to which he subscribes. It's interesting. It follows a lot of sort of like the romantic comedy plot lines when you have, he does.
That's
in fact, he marries her and then regrets it and then is going to his sister, and he's like infantile and adolescent in how he's explaining it. And she is like 2 steps ahead of him. His wife is 2 steps ahead of him in terms of understanding him more so than he understands himself. And, it actually has a happy ending. And I would say a believable happy ending, where sometimes with romantic comedies,
wants to be made sick. It's crazy.
Yeah, you're left with romantic comedies thinking like, okay, they're together, they have their union, but what's it really going to be like in, say, 6 months, a year? Like this one, you have a sense of what it's going to be like 6 months or a year. They've already worked that out, and this is what it is. So,
and the sister was, she's nominated.
It was very Trump's White House, like the House. You know what I mean? And she's like sort of an enabler, or this is just the deal. This is who he is. This is how he is. And I think she always played along with that this is how he is, and I will dispatch the woman when you're done with them. But she appreciated almost that somebody got him, like got one up on him. Mm-hmm. And then she almost started to use that against him. Like, oh, we finally got someone, So I'm almost going to pull back and not think you're all the almighty. Now, Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler, when we saw that movie, that was like, oh my gosh, this is where Mickey Rourke is right now. And this movie is almost a true analogy of his life and his comeback. And you can't have a better kind of real life art tying up. Did you feel that way? Was this Daniel Day-Lewis's The Wrestler? Because doesn't it feel to you when you're watching this movie, this is Daniel Day-Lewis in real life?
Yeah, I could see that.
Right?
Yeah.
I would say that this is the only Daniel Day-Lewis movie I've left thinking that I would like to see the funny outtakes.
That's so crazy.
Because he is usually so, he is so intense and he's so into his role, but like I could have seen there being some funny outtakes from this film where like lines are flubbed or like, and they're actually enjoying themselves. But I understand it's a very intense environment. They're shooting in a sort of a claustrophobic setting. And
he learned how to sew.
He did, yeah.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
He's going to open his fashion house now. His
name sounds like a fashion house too.
It does. Now, I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis in real life, it's funny, we know a lot about him, but we don't know a lot about him. I mean, his father obviously was, enormously successful poet, and he is married to, literary royalty. He's married to Arthur Miller's daughter, who herself is a terrific artist in her own right. So I don't think Daniel Day-Lewis and completely off here, but I don't really think that he holds sway over Rebecca Miller the way he did over his wife in this film whatsoever. But I went into it with more of an open mind than I thought I would have, knowing what I did, because with this film, no one really knew what to make of it because they were releasing so little about it. Like even the title itself came pretty late in the game, and all you knew it's Paul Thomas Anderson and Daniel Day-Lewis working together on what is potentially Daniel Day-Lewis's last film, and it's about fashion in this period, and that's all you knew. And so I went into an open mind, and then was like really surprised at my take on it. I came away like, wow, this is actually a funny movie, and it is, I think, a romantic comedy in some ways.
It was enthralling, the entire thing. Mm-hmm. Like you weren't excited to go see it, but when you got in there, it almost made me feel like, say there's a basketball team. You have the best coach and you have the best players. And then they're like, this isn't even hard anymore. Let's just play this game. Everyone's going to dribble with their left hand. And the dribbling with your left hand was 1950s London. Let's just throw this trick shot.
Nice analogy.
Paul Thomas Anderson has no connection to this. I heard him in an interview say, yeah, I had to learn all about 1950s. And you're like, why? Why did you do this? You have all these players and you're going to try to dribble the whole game with your left hand, and you're going to shoot with your left hand. Only 3-point left-handers and not even a side hand on it. But it was just completely engrossing to watch it.
Yeah, I was intrigued as it was going on. Like, what's going to happen and what is this all about? But then I was like, wait a minute, that's, again, underwhelmed.
Well, and I loved their focus on food in this movie. The whole thing, down to like what he's having for that crazy breakfast, where it's like, the poached the rabbit with a poached egg on top, and then sausages and all this stuff. Everything was about food, as we find out at the end too. I mean, everything's about food in that regard. But it was. Every part of it was just, you're sort of walking through this world where you would have zero interest in any way, but because people at the top of their game are doing it, you'll watch.
Well, yeah, I mean, the metaphor for me was appetite, and the appetite of an artist. Can it ever be satisfied? Temporarily so, but then ultimately he or she becomes hungry again, and hungry for something that no one else can supply, which is why then he discards his women and then finds something new. Whereas, in this instance, he may have found something that actually stays interesting enough to satisfy his appetite continuously. So
another good analogy.
And the breakfast in the morning, like you've never wanted to just sit down to breakfast and have, is that lapsang souchong or whatever? Everyone always talks about that.
It's like a horse just rode in through here. I mean, I was cracking up when he
it was.
And he says that in the Grays, when he throws the tantrum to his sister at the end, and then his wife walks in behind him, and like his sister just lets him continue. And this is one of them. I'm going to go back to what I said before. Like 3 or 4 years, we may go back and look. It's like, actually, Phantom Thread better than maybe we gave it credit for. It aged better. It's possible.
It'll absolutely.
It was good.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. You didn't want to get up and leave. You were interested to see what was going to happen. He's phenomenal. Do I think it's his best work? No.
I think the kind of the meditation on courtship and marriage was so true in the sense that he is this star at his profession, and he's using that as cover to get rid of women he's bored with, really. And then using his sister as a figure to just dispatch them kind of as an entourage.
It's also about how we each make our choices. And you get to a certain point in life where you come to understand that my life actually reflects my choices. And his sister probably at some point, not during the film, but prior to the film, probably looked and said, all right, I've made my choices, and my choices are to support my brother and to play this role in his life, just as he has made his choices, not to attach himself to a partner for a long period of time, but it's designed to allow him to fulfill his professional potential. And then you have the waitress herself coming into it, who's making her choices, like, here's my way to get out of the life I'm living into this other life. And she is, I think, coming to grips with her choices about the film, where she's dealing with two people who are pretty settled, and she is trying to enter that and trying to do so in a way where she doesn't get destroyed, where she's trying to protect herself and protect her individuality and protect her autonomy, which is very difficult to do when you're dealing with two, just sort of immovable objects who are set in their ways. So it's interesting.
Oh my gosh, in the scene that couldn't be any truer than like long-term marriage, even though they weren't even there yet. And I'm not speaking from experience. Maybe Jayme will, but I'm just kidding. But the scene where she dispatches everybody from the house to make dinner that night, and how he walks into it, and of course he's so routinized that he has his walk on Tuesday nights or whatever. That's the one day he goes for a walk in nice shoes, and then watching him walk in to something that was like so unsettling to him, which was that his sister's not there and the staff isn't there, and then he kind of plays along with it. But then just it all comes out at the table.
And I totally got that, by the way.
Yeah,
because
me too.
Yeah, I'm such a creature of routine.
Yeah.
And then you throw off my routine and I, just have a disproportionate response to it. And it's only later that I realize, in the moment I do realize like I'm being ridiculous. I can't help it. This is just who I am. And then, I get beyond a little bit. I'm like, wow, I really was being ridiculous.
And as the woman who goes through all the hard work and to have it just be, blow up in her face, like that's life. That's what goes on.
And Leslie Manville, she should be way higher up in the supporting actress. Like that was an unbelievable role that she played. Was the one thing. And watching her metamorphosis, understanding that there was a true opponent in this, but one she respected because she played along with it. But the two other things from this I thought were great were, one, you realize that Michael Fassbender should not have played Steve Jobs. There's nobody else who should have played Steve Jobs except Daniel Day-Lewis. I don't think you could have a better person play Steve Jobs. The Phantom Thread, just what he was in The Phantom Thread, was Steve Jobs. And it's nothing against Michael Fassbender. He's a fine actor, but they missed that aspect, which is primarily who Steve Jobs was this guy.
Yeah.
With the thread as opposed to with, computer devices.
Technology.
Two, did anybody else have the weird post-traumatic stress syndrome of Daniel Day-Lewis going up into a theater and overlooking the theater with Lincoln?
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sitting there going, oh my God, it's Daniel Day-Lewis and he's back in the theater when he was going to. And did anyone think there was going to be something different? Wasn't that a weird scene? When he shows up at the theater because his wife goes to this New Year's thing and you're expecting her to be like making out with some other person and then it wasn't that. And you're like, oh, what is that? And my favorite in this was when they finally sleep together. And then the next morning is the one where he's just like, he doesn't want her at the table in the morning.
Right.
That was classic. Like he's all like romancing at night and then they go into the room together and the next day it's so true. It's just like,
yeah.
Yes, that was the buttered toast thing the next morning, wasn't it?
Yeah. Why are you so loud with the? Yeah,
I think so. Okay, it's funny that we talked about that one the most. Only two more here in our. There was 8 this year, I believe. The Post. This was my favorite movie of the year.
No, it wasn't. It was Dunkirk.
For me. No. The Post was my favorite. I thought it was really well done. It was probably Disney-fied a little bit, but I think you put so many great actors. Michael Stuhlbarg again, playing Abe Rosenthal from the New York Times. You put all these people together, and it gave me the Spotlight feeling. We should have a newspaper movie every year. I love it. They find a way to make it tense, and to give it the dramatic effect. I think the stories of Katharine Graham were pretty true, and her high society cavorting and then having to overcome that to put this stuff out. Now you come to find out a lot of this was really the Times, and they sort of did tell that story, but it sort of seemed like the Post ended up being the main player. But you learned a lot in this movie. I think the exposition in this movie was maybe a little too much, but it was good to constantly be told what's going on, because Melanie didn't know anything about this and she came out of it understanding everything. Like they explained everything really well. I really liked it. It was my favorite movie of all the movies I saw on this list.
I wanted to really like it specifically because I thought it was going to knock Dunkirk out of the discussion. You got Spielberg and Meryl Streep, and it's just this great cast. But I feel like the gravity of what really went on didn't translate to the screen. I felt like if you were watching it, I didn't feel the enormity of what it really was. I didn't think it was enough. I don't know. I thought it was kind of flat. And it's like all these great, this great cast with a great storyline and just kind of shit the bed. Like I just didn't, not really, but I mean, it was fine, but I just don't think it let you understand the importance of what was happening as much as it should have. So you be the tiebreaker.
You mentioned my mom. This is actually the movie my mom would have loved to have seen the most because it had Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, and it certainly was from a time period that she knew. I didn't think it could be much better. Yeah. I mean, I really liked it. Really enjoyed it. I don't believe it's stayed with me or will stay with me. It might be the most rewatchable of all the movies that are nominated for Best Picture.
But you knew this story.
You knew the story, and I think some of the characters in it are actually, in real life, are much more dynamic than they even came across on screen. I think there's a lot more to them, but I think they did the best they could with what they did. So I can't necessarily point to any flaws as to why I didn't love it. I don't necessarily know if they could have made it any better. Was
the problem the Spielberg gloss? To the movie?
That's what he does.
He didn't need to be the director of this movie.
Probably not. Maybe it would have taken a grittier...
Yeah, if it were All the President's Men, I think it would have been really good. And it was an homage to that because they left this movie off. So you could now go and watch All the President's Men.
And... So I would say the maybe one criticism I had is it was a little stagey at different points with if you mentioned the exposition with him Bren Badley having to go and explain each sort of visit and sit down, and there may have been one too many of those. But
Tracy Letts again, by the way, tremendous in this one, I thought. But I thought.
I think I'll say, repeating myself, I think it's probably the most rewatchable one where when it's in rotation, say in 6 months on cable, and then after that, I probably will sit down and pick up at different points and want to watch it. But, very well done. Just didn't necessarily register with me on an emotional level.
Yeah, I thought Spotlight was so much better. Spotlight, I felt that, importance.
That might have been an easier one to tell, though. This was so vast, to bring this story in, to go from Vietnam to try to, it's almost too hard to tell in some ways, at these levels. Spotlight was, and I love Spotlight, but it was kind of a similar template, but Spotlight was the one city, the one scandal, the Pentagon thing had so many scandalous aspects to it. To the part I didn't even realize about how Nixon basically shut down the Times from being able to report it, and that's why the Post was able to come. There was so much to explain. I think it was almost too weighted. It was like a plane with too much luggage, but it did a pretty good job landing it. The next, I think I told Tim this on a previous podcast, the next newspaper movie, The Times, and it's going to be so fitting come Oscar season, and I'm saying it's going to be this. It's not actually coming out. Weinstein, the movie, because the Times was the one who broke that with the 2 female reporters. Mm-hmm. That will be the movie, because think about how much the storyline opens up when you think about Hollywood being involved, when you think about the Mossad being involved in tracking down these women and spies and all this stuff, and it being the Times and him being such a power player where he was just he was basically just at the Oscars winning all these, and then now he's going to be the subject. I think it's going to happen.
And that plays to the point that my girlfriend was saying, in times of this kind of hardship and bad stuff comes wonderful art.
Well, that's
that's what we're going to get from what's happening. Kind of the
beauty of Trump as an anti-force is his presence opened up these kind of scarred over wounds, because people were saying, well, geez, he's there and he did it. Let's open up the floodgates on all these other stories. So he kind of ended up doing that. Last one in the list, Best Picture, Darkest Hour. This was the tour de force of Gary Oldman. I mean, he was straight up Winston Churchill He became it so much that you almost can't imagine Winston Churchill himself. It would have been cool to intersperse Dunkirk and this movie together, create some kind of stitched together movie. I don't think there's a ton to say about it. I think it did a great job creating the feeling of why there was urgency, of how important Winston Churchill was to pushing back on this, to not negotiating any kind of truce, but winning at all odds, because there's certain times where you have to fight through and win, because if you negotiate, you lose.
Right.
And it means more than anything else. So
I thought it was good. I thought it was well done. I couldn't picture what he really looked like watching it. He was Churchill. But this, as opposed to Dunkirk, it laid it out for you. So you knew what was going on. You know, it was better that way. I thought this was a little slow, but overall, it was good. I liked it.
It did a good job explaining the unique aspects of British politics too, don't you think?
It does, yeah. Of all the films, this is the one that surprised me the most, as in terms of being included in the Best Picture lineup. I didn't think it was going to make the cut. Obviously it's Gary Oldman's vehicle, and he's going to win Best Actor, and it's both a career achievement as well as, I think, a rightful recognition of what he did in this movie. I wouldn't say it's his best work overall, but interestingly enough, this is his only second nomination ever.
Really?
Yes. When you think of Gary Oldman, you think...
What's the first one?
That would be Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Oh my gosh, for that?
Oh.
Which he was out of this world good in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Did you read those books?
I've read one or two.
Yeah, so I know you don't have to though, right?
No. And actually, they're making a sequel. So they're making, I think, Smiley's Man.
Do you know Call Me by Your Name? They're making a sequel apparently.
Oh,
potentially.
Good God.
I did not know that. So I think this is, it's his movie. Going back to something I said earlier, sometimes the movies that are really performance heavy don't make the best pictures, but really are a showcase for that actor or actress. I kind of felt that way with Darkest Hour, where especially toward the end, some of the story became a little bit hokey in how they were telling it, and how they, sort of the speeches to, different audiences, both informally and formally. But liked it, didn't dislike it, just didn't necessarily think it belonged in the Best Picture queue, but do think he's going to win Best Picture. I mean, Best Actor.
Yeah, I think he will as well.
Would it be a bigger achievement to win Best Picture, or the fact that he's been married 5 times?
once to Uma Thurman.
And to Leslie Manville once.
Yeah. And he did
crazy?
Isabella Rossellini too, didn't he? Or he dated Isabella Rossellini. I don't know if you were married.
Wow.
But they met on
5 times.
Immortal Beloved. They met on the set of Immortal Beloved. But I mean, going back to, I remember the first thing I saw him in was State of Grace in 1990.
What about Sid and Nancy?
I didn't. Yeah, I actually never saw that. But State of Grace, and he was just, and I mean, he also played Lee Harvey Oswald in JFK.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Now he's also been in some garbage too, so we shouldn't discount that. But everybody's got to work.
So we've talked about a lot of the films that are in a different running, but why don't we hit some of these in our last 10 minutes or so that are not in Best Picture, but that have either a Best Actress, Actor, supporting. The first one I want to get to, because Best Actress is in the list, I, Tonya. Did everyone see this?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We didn't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a good movie, and I believe that it kind of made you feel sympathy for Tonya Harding.
That's why I didn't like it. Only reason.
I need to read more, I think, because if this movie is somewhat true to life, is it possible that she's not as conspiratorial and conspiring as we thought, but that it was these sort of Coen brother movie characters who were around her who took this thing down? Because when they showed you the real life story, these real life clips of these people, it was not that far off from the joke that this seemed.
Yeah, no, I lived it, watched it, back as it was happening, and I was team Oksana Bayul that year. I mean, I didn't like Nancy Kerrigan as a skater, but I thought the movie was really good. The only thing I didn't like was you felt bad for her, and in real life you shouldn't feel bad for her.
I mean, as a person, fine, but like, I got to read on this more. Was she more involved in this than it appeared in the movie?
I think so.
I actually think it's all secondary to the story that they were trying to tell. I mean, you can't avoid it.
But Tonya Harding is sort of having a run going around all the award shows now as if she's some conquering hero, and that's not cool either.
That's the problem.
If this is the case.
Yeah,
But Allison Janney, phenomenal.
Oh my God.
She's great. She is terrific. She probably will end up winning. My vote's with Laurie Metcalf.
Yeah, I loved her too.
I think, as I was sitting down to watch the movie, it dawned on me that for someone who is so present in my mind, Tonya Harding, who's present in all of our minds, like, I know nothing about her. She's kind of a cipher. You
know the contours of the story, but we haven't paid attention to it.
No, and I don't remember ever really sitting and watching an interview with her. I know I think she did some.
Oh, see,
at
I
the
did.
time,
I'm all about her and that whole story. And,
Tabloid Tonya.
Yeah,
totally
I was all about it. So
I thought this is a movie where if it had been included in Best Picture, the Best Picture lineup instead of Darkest Hour, I think you could make a stronger case for this than Darkest Hour in some ways.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I thought Margot Robbie was terrific, and
the first scene opened. I actually thought that was Tonya Harding, like the very first scene when they go. Because I was like, oh, maybe there's a part of the movie where they actually have the real Tonya, and I was like, oh my God, it's not. And I can't believe that they somehow made Margot Robbie unattractive.
Right,
like that is one of the biggest transformational shocks without doing anything.
Right,
because the one great part of Wolf of Wall Street is. That is the most unbelievable role for a woman ever.
Right.
Like coming out story.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I thought the hitting scenes were so real. Like the husband hitting the wife. Like you never see that stuff in art a lot. And it looked so real. As I said, made you feel sorry for Tonya Harding.
Yeah, that's the only thing I didn't like, that it made you feel badly for her.
I did like the other aspect with Allison Janney as the mom. I liked that she sort of was she did turn on her daughter. She was also an advocate for her daughter, pushing, they're trailer park people basically. And she's pushing her into this elite society, seeing her daughter's talent in that first scene where she's like, no. And she's like smoking a cigarette at the ice rink. She's like, no, you're going to work with her.
Right.
That was kind of good. Other one, Mudbound, that as a supporting actress for Mary J. Blige, I don't understand it. Neither of you, I think, saw Mudbound.
It's a great story.
But I didn't understand how she was a supporting actress. That was weird. It must be because she had the song and they wanted to make this whole deal about the first person who has a song and she's nominated for another category. But I didn't love it. I think my gut feeling is that it's a Netflix movie, and I think that Hollywood wants to show their appreciation to Netflix for basically bringing the industry back up and putting all this money into the art. So they want to make sure that they're out there. Amazon has sort of been the entity that's created these great movies on their own accord, and they're pushing their way into the movie categories. Netflix has done okay with TV. But yeah, I didn't quite understand it. It was not a great movie. Molly's Game.
No.
You see that? I saw that one. I was telling Tim, this movie done by Aaron Sorkin and Jessica Chastain. Is that I always mess her up with someone else. It felt to me like one of those softcore pornography movies on After Dark on Cinemax or Showtime, but without the sex. Like it was all these voiceover scenes where she's talking and it's these poker games and it felt that way to me, like not very thought out stuff, like just trying to create something to get to the sex scenes where you don't see anything except upper body. It was weird. It felt cheesy, the voiceover stuff, but since it's Aaron Sorkin and they have Kevin Costner's in it, which is kind of funny. Last one we all saw, The Florida Project. This was one of my top 3 or 4, maybe 5 movies I saw this year.
And one of my least favorite.
Which is interesting. And it's one of Tim's least favorite too.
I was annoyed watching it. Like it pissed me off.
I thought Willem Dafoe was terrific, and I actually think he maybe should win Best Supporting Actor. But the film itself, I mean, I had a hard time with it watching it. It just... I saw this one most recently. I actually watched, I think, Thursday night.
Yeah, I did too, I think.
And I just had a difficult time, and it might be just because of where my head is right now. But it was tough. But
I mean,
thought he was
I
terrific.
I get it. This wonderful commercial money thing, and then on the outskirts, it's what real life really is. But the kid,
it's hopeless.
the kid, I wanted to kick her. I couldn't stand her. The mother, and William just felt like he was just like a good guy. Just a simple good guy, but an enabler to all of that.
And I think that to me is the last scene where it's all unraveling in terms of the Child Protective Services there, and he's
checking on if the woman's okay with the
witness,
washer.
and just the look on his face where he realizes that he comes to that conclusion that I was trying to help, but really I enabled this, and that just kind of what is my purpose, what is my existence. And he, I think, really conveyed that very, very well.
I had a lot of feelings that I had for Room with this movie.
Really?
Yeah. You have the young child dynamic where the mother in some ways is trying to shield the child from, I mean, not close. I'm not saying close like that, but from a situation, from a situation that is sort of hopeless, and you're trying to make the best to keep a child for as much as you can. Now, I wonder if Brie Larson were playing this, if it would be different. But there was just such hopelessness on the outskirts of such a hopeful, manicured magic kingdom that I like that
everywhere.
aspect. Sure,
Atlantic City.
But I liked it. How it was shot, though, in tropical summer Florida. It's the same thing we all like in the brochures, but this is a purple or pink motel.
Yeah.
Right. So I liked it a lot. I really liked it. I don't know if it was because I was watching Liam that weekend by myself and I got time at night and he was asleep and I was free and clear to do it. I did not see The Disaster Artist. I will not see it.
I will not see it.
It does not look good.
Can we talk about the one that you don't want to see that I thought was phenomenal? Roman J. Israel Esquire.
Oh gosh, she actually saw that one.
Loved it.
I know a lot of people who loved it.
Loved it. Why aren't people talking about it?
I heard it wasn't a good movie, that he was really good, but that it wasn't
he's good in
movie.
everything. I mean, I still think he should have won last year for Fences. I'm still mad at that, but I thought it was excellent. I thought the story was great. I thought it had great twists. I don't know why people aren't talking about it. Similarly to Wind River. I mean, Tim told me to watch that, and I didn't know anything about it. And why is Jeremy Renner not up for Best Actor, and why is he not winning it? What a great movie that was.
It was a Weinstein movie.
Oh. Okay.
It was a Weinstein movie, but maybe my favorite movie of the year.
By far.
Yeah.
By far.
I'll have to see it.
But you just answered all of the questions because I couldn't understand why this wasn't up there. But that and the Roman one was great. And you said that was like bad editing, bad everything.
I just read that it wasn't.
That you've read about it, right?
Yeah. So I just never got the chance. So.
But both of them I liked better than all of the other Best Picture nominations.
We all have our movies.
Mm-hmm.
Post Florida Project. I guess Dunkirk, if you'll say it for me.
Yeah.
But
I don't know what mine are. I mean, probably Phantom Thread, Wind River, which was not nominated. And then I don't even know what my third would be. I mean, probably Lady Bird. I'd probably put that on my list.
I'd put that there.
All of yours were 2-word.
Yeah. But if you tell me that Three Billboards ends up winning Best Picture,
sure,
I can live with that world.
All right. Well,
not Shape of Water though.
I
don't want to.
Harder to live with.
Harder to live with.
Final thing. The only thing I think that I have to see that's on any of these lists that was sort of a cult favorite this last year was Baby Driver.
Oh yeah,
that's good, right?
It is good. Yeah,
it's fun, even though Kevin.
Great
Spacey's
performances.
in it.
Yeah, great performances by Jamie Foxx, John Hamm, and Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, got to see that one.
Love Kevin Spacey.
Well, I think we covered everything, folks.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
I can't wait till next year.
Me too.
That'll be 5.
5.
Let's hope we all make it there.
Thanks.